Thank you. And I am greatly humbled and appreciative to be on this podcast and sharing about the International Institute of Family Development. My name is Veola Green, and I am the Managing Director and Chief Executive Officer of the for profit company. We are based in Maryland, and we're operating out of the Republic of the Gambia, registered and operating out of the Republic of the Gambia. So I'll tell you a bit about who I am first, and the passion that drove me here, and a bit about my background. So I come from Boston, Massachusetts, born and raised in Boston, Massachusetts. My mother's family, which I had mentioned, are Black American, and they were owned in this country as a part of colonization. And they were a mixed breed family, both Blackfoot, Native American, and African. And we are unsure of which country that they hail from Africa. And my father's family came from Kansas, and they lived on reservations. And my father is Cheyenne, Native American. So my identification is with people of color, particularly African people, particularly indigenous people who are struggling around the world. And the work that I do, I've been working in child welfare for over 20 years, and social welfare. So ensuring that children and families have what they need to grow and thrive and be healthy together. What I've discovered in my 20-year career journey is that Black folks or people of color are always at the bottom rung of every social data statistic: housing, education, healthcare, economic development. Especially in America, where places that has been colonized, if you look at South Africa, you look at Europe, you will see that Black folks are not doing as well as they could be, or their counterparts. And it has a story to tell. And so in 2015, by the grace of God, created the International Institute of Family Development. And that is a for-profit company whose sole mission is to realize the dream, support African nations to realize their dreams. And that dream is to bring to life their national development plans. And we do that through connections with the diaspora businesses, diaspora organizations, to bring development opportunities from Black folks to Black folks on the continent. And we've been successful in launching several initiatives across the continent, and we look forward to doing more.
Thank you very much for that. It is very important that you mention. This is the moment for all of us to connect. I think Michael Garvey have been striving, have been working hard for this, for his time, for all the African, wherever we are, to connect, because all of us have a common destiny. We are coming from the same place, and we are also suffering for the same reason, for being who we are. It's only that we have taken enough time to explore that aspect of our life very well. Now, I am sort of curious, Vala, that when you were much younger in the US growing up, I want to believe that when you were just too young, you wouldn't even understand that there was any difference between being Black and being white, or
Oh,
being
no,
treated in a society. So maybe when you
that's
didn't
not
know
true.
anything. So when did you start to realize that you were being treated differently? When did
That's
you
not
start to
true.
realize this?
In the United States, for people of color, you know that right away. It's ingrained in the fabric of our country. And if you watch uh, our most in our election process, if you watch our political process, our discourse, you will hear that the social inequities that were codified in law, that disenfranchised and advantaged others, just like the codified laws in South Africa, they existed here. So I am in the United States of America. I'm considered light skinned, right? Um, and so there's a difference between, right, that experience and the experience that white people or the majority population give Black folks. early on, I grew up in Roxbury. I grew up poor. I didn't know I was poor. Everybody around me was working class folks. They went to work every day. We held our own gardens. The woman who raised me, my great great aunt, she was born in 1911. She was a daughter of a sharecropper. She was one generation removed from having shackles on her. She had whip marks on her back from being beaten. She could not speak to her grandparents because they didn't speak English. Her grandparents were a mixed race couple, and one she identified, she knew he came from Africa, and because he spoke multiple languages and she couldn't speak nearly none of them. And her mother would never teach her children those languages. So we lost out on that. So growing up here, I grew up in Roxbury at the time in the early 80s when I was a young person. And Roxbury was a really poor community. Now it's a vibrant hub, gentrified now, vibrant hub, where the time trash dumping, I grew up through the bus boycotts in Boston, where segregation was real in the 1980s, not the 60s, the 80s, where you would, if you wanted your child to attend, you had a Black child to attend a public school, you would have to think about the location you lived in and or send to private school. So my family, who was very poor, joined their money together and sent me to private school. I didn't know that I was poor until I left
It's one
home,
of the leading email
removed by state
marketing software
custody,
providers out there,
because
and it
due
has
to
been so
poverty,
for
social
years. With its
services
easy to
removed
use.
due to poverty and other reasons, and then given a context to understand that our culture, our way of life, our living in a communal home where we had one home with, you know, maybe 5 bedrooms, multiple people living in the home was wrong. It wasn't the American way. And so we were given a different context of living independently. And I think Black people, we live by sharing, we live interconnectedly. Every time I'm in the continent of Africa, when it's lunchtime, there's a big bowl and we all come together and we eat on that bowl. And that was the way that I grew up. We farmed. I picked, I blueberries, and I picked poke salad, and we got a turtle when I was younger. And my mama and daddy, they shelled the turtle, and we had turtle meat. We had chickens in our backyard. So I didn't know these things, and so I lived with Haitians and Cape Verdeans and people from Montserrat, all lived together. These are Black people from the Caribbean islands who all had a shared common experience. I think that is what is missing, right, in our development as a people um, across the globe as Black folks, Indigenous folks, is honoring who we are, our customs, our culture, because that's what binds us, that's what keeps us sane, it's what keeps us healthy. And in doing that work, even in the business sector, even though my company is a for-profit, a portion of our profit, 10% in most cases, goes back in the form of dividends for development to NGOs that are doing work on the ground to ensure that we are eradicating poverty. We are creating opportunities for advancement so that women can make choices, right, for their families, so that you don't have to choose between electricity in some cases and medication, or electricity and food, when there's a when the when the floods occur, that you have the opportunity to have the support that is necessary to rebuild your lives. And that's stuff that you don't learn in the business world. The business world is pretty, you know, straight. And our focus of our company is doing social enterprise. We care deeply about the people that we are here doing business with, because we want to make sure that the companies that are coming in to do business actually are helping, and they're healing hurt and injustices that has been done in the name of progress and advancement.
Thank you very much for that. So before I move to the main topic, which is the family itself, because I'm going to be asking you something like, how you see family as it were. I want to remain one more the time that you were much younger, now that you are beginning to understand how the society is set up, that you are being treated differently for no fault of your own.
Mm.
I want to believe that at that time you were also like curious, asking questions like to your parents or to your guardian or to the people around you. But why? Because you know you didn't do anything, but you are being treated differently. I want to believe that you were asking questions. What kind of answer were given to you?
I didn't have to ask questions because the stories were being told. We gave oral history of our family life. And so in the early 80s, there was a program called Roots and Eyes on the Prize. And so many of my family members marched with Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Others were with Malcolm X and other different movements for Black liberation and solidarity, and the Brown movement that occurred here in the United States of America. So they told stories about making sure we knew who we were, that we understood, and we had a analysis of power, a power analysis of how the world operated, and why it exists, why it exists in the way that it does. Early on, we scarcity wasn't something that we believed in as a family. We were told we're your children from the sun, and abundance is your birthright. Not many people hear that growing up. So we knew that the opportunity was available. We knew that we had to work twice as hard as our counterparts in order to be even considered to be good enough. So that was a part of the conversation we had within our family context about ensuring that we sought opportunity. And we knew that those who owned, right? When I grew up in Boston, ownership for housing didn't occur, right? I ended up working for Community Coalition, CRA Investment, Community and Reinvestment Act. And it wasn't until the 1990s that banks decided to open up lending institutions in predominantly Black and Latino neighborhoods that they considered to be worthy of credit. When you had years upon years, decades of codified law, where you had resettlement acts and redlining that was in law by banks and by the federal government, that disallowed and disadvantaged, I should say, really disadvantaged people of color from owning property. And so there included the wealth gap. And the same thing happens across Africa, but differently. So there's a wealth gap when you look at, Afrikaners and Afrikaans, right? Native people from African and Afrikaners, the settlers, who gets to own. So you may have a house that's passed down in family land, but you don't own your manufacturing rights, right? You import, and that importation comes from your colonial nation, right? That governs your land. And so the opportunities you see quite clearly are advantageous to others and disadvantageous to you, and the limitations that society allows you to think of yourself as is embedded in the way in your instruction, your education, and who you see to fulfill those roles.
Thank you also for that, because you are touching arguments that are really very important. I wish we could have all the time, because each of them deserve their treatment, no? Because when we look at how Africans in the United States, for example, African American in this case, the way they are treated, sometimes one person might think, okay, maybe Africans are free. But the point is that no, we are not free. Those in Africa are not free. We suffer exactly the same thing, like I was saying before. All of us are suffering from the same crime, the crime of being an African. So the liberty also, in fact, the reason that the perpetration of the injustice against the African American and African in other part of the world continue is because there is no country in Africa that can stand up, which means that, because if there were any free country in Africa, they would stand up, of course, they bear the cost. It's like maybe some people coming from Africa to imprison the Italians. If the Italians do not have the power, Germany will rise up, Spain will rise up, France will rise up in their defense. But in the case of Africa, when we had become the prisoner of war, like I usually say, we don't yet have any country that can stand up and say, oh, leave them alone. If you don't, you are going to have these consequences. So for this reason, we are all suffering the same thing. We are just brothers in this suffering, or sisters in this suffering. But anyway, we
I
are
think there's
gradually
some
constructing a
opportunity.
way to get out of these chains. Yes, say something, please.
I think there's some opportunities about how we are structuring the African Union. For good or bad, Gaddafi was doing work, and he was doing economic development work in order to create one currency. Before, if you know any Libyans before we invaded Libya, you would know that most Libyans didn't have their,
Exporting democracy, right?
whether it's right or wrong, I'm not here to make judgments on that, but I'm going to look at the comparison between being Black in America, being Black in the UK and Europe, and Libya. You could, if you were a Libyan, if you wanted to study abroad, whether it happened fairly or not, most people could study abroad and their finances would be paid for. We don't have that opportunity. You have housing allowances. You have a child and you received an allowance. You're you look at the UAE, if you move across and you look at the opportunities where their oil reserves are going to support their development, and all their people have a standard of living, right? A basic standard of living. And I think that that was something for us to look at. And I think that when we were looking at when France was having conversations with its, with the nations that it used to oversee in Africa, when they were looking at getting rid of their CEPHA, they were looking to undo that harm. Like, why should African nations take their resources and bank, right, in French owned banks, and then you receive a loan on your own money, and you have to make justifications for. I've never seen a gold mine in France, but I can go to Sierra Leone and stand on a mountain and tell you that there's gold in there. And how do we start to develop those resources for ourselves, for Africans to use? And that's the work of the International Institute of Family Development, is that there's our society as Africans, as Indigenous people, cannot continue to stand if we do not strengthen ourselves as a family as in, mother, father, multiple wives and father, however that family structure fits for nation building and creating opportunities that the diaspora can play a pivotal role in coming back and supporting that development. We spend a lot of time on foreign direct investments from other nations. And other nations are coming in and doing their work, but most of that is imported work. And if you are building a train, if you're building a train line in Zimbabwe or in Zambia, the workers of that train line, the consultants that come in, are coming in from the country of which, and the resources and the development is happening in the host country. We would love, the International Institute would love to be able. We have oranges. I'm just going to give a couple of examples. We have oranges that grow, right, and throughout Africa. I cannot find in West Africa an orange, a full-fledged, a modern orange juice manufacturing facility. What we do is we sell in raw, in bulk, at a detriment to ourselves, and then we import that juice that is refined. We do the same thing with peanut. When I go to the stores to find peanut butter or peanut oil, wherever I'm in West Africa, I look at, this was produced where, and this is manufactured where, but the peanuts came from, I have tons of clients who are saying, can you help us move our trucks and move our peanuts out of country? And when I was like, yes, I want to do a really good thing, but then I would pause and say, have we thought about ways and opportunities that we can manufacture and develop that peanuts in country? And people stopped, I think, when we say we're not free because we sometimes don't think that we have the capability. I believe most strongly that Africa has some of the most brightest minds on the continent. And with the right opportunities put before us, with the right connections to our global family, I believe that we can really change the paradigm where we will become a first world country, first world nation.
Yeah, yeah. There is that possibility, and of course, it's going to depend. It's going to depend on how much we are going to take, because now we're talking of education. It's not like we are really lucky the people in terms of the physical energy, in terms of the human energy. But what is a human energy now if you are not being educated to put it right? Of course, by education, it doesn't necessarily mean we are waiting for some other person to come home, to go to Africa and educate them on how to do things. But anyway, we're not going to go into those areas today. The central theme of this conversation is family, and you have used the word family for a number of times in the time what we have spent so far in this podcast. So, what would be your own description of the family? Let's take the argument from this point now.
So, family is so vitally important to me. I have a small family, a small immediate family, and a larger family that I have been disconnected from. And it's been my goal most of my life to be reconnected with that family and to build a strong nuclear family. I'm 46, I'm single, divorced. With children, an adult son and two teenagers. Um, and the ideal of family provides protection, it provides guidance, it provides opportunity, legacy development. And that's huge because the work that I'm doing isn't just for me in the now. It is for the opportunity that my children's children and their children will one day look back and be able to have a leg to stand upon. It's about empire building. Uh, and I think we've got away from building empires and dynasties. I think when we think about empires and dynasties, we think of white families. I can name a few. We think of Bush. And you know where that is, right? That's a whole political family, or the Kennedys. There's nothing wrong with that. But I think that there is ways in which that Black folks and Indigenous folks, poor people, come together and build relationships that support nation building, that support family. Without a strong family foundation, your community suffers, your morals move, your opportunity for development and advancement, you become singular in your thinking. It becomes totally transactional engagements about money, about cash, about wealth. Well, not wealth, it becomes about getting rich. And wealth is something different. Wealth is your opportunity that you're leaving something, both knowledge, about skills and wisdom for it to be built upon, to be expanded. And so for me personally, would I love to be able to build family, to build empire with someone that comes into what I have existing and create even more? Absolutely. There's nothing more important in this world than to share your love, your time, your energy in building something that gives honor to what God put you here for, to give that spirit a way to express itself.
All right, Veola, you see, now, like I was saying before, we are not broken-headed, we are not broken hands, we are fully fresh human being, but we are where we are because some other persons have educated us to be this way, no? So it means that for us to also get to where we need to be, we need to change it from here, from education, from the re-education of our mind. I don't know how this is going to come. It's going to come from people like you. It's going to come from people that are at home. It's going to come, well, somehow it's going to come from among us. And that solution is education. So what is your reaction to family education? We are still within the theme of family. Because if we are going to have the value, because sometimes what is broken actually is the value system. It's not because if we want to build 1 million army in Africa, we don't have people to do it. It just take a couple of years to trade there, and they'll be able to take down any threat that is coming into the territory from any angle. You just need the mind. We first need to get it here. How do we go about the education?
So I think the education comes from a heart, spirit-centered place, and then you seek out education because we're not empty vessels in our minds. We have some thoughts already. Even a 5-year-old has some thoughts, and I think those thoughts are generated from what we believe in our hearts. And if we start to, and we look at our contracting across Africa, and we're thinking and we're putting the value of family, of nation building, of legacy development, of uh, eradicating poverty, undoing the harms of colonialism into our uh, into our work every day. There is not a time where a foreign investor will go into China and come out with a deal that is totally beneficial for the foreign investor. It won't happen because no matter what we say, we look at Taiwan or we look at Singapore, part of their way of they do business is a values-based way of doing business. And that value says that it is their survival is first, their advancement is first. And I appreciate that. I look how far Taiwan and Singapore has come in the last 30 years with their technological advancements. And the world is looking towards them now. That too can be all the nations of Africa. And I think that comes into play where the mind piece comes into play when we are no longer looking at the fact that we're doing this on an individual basis. Often people talk to me about corruption. Why do you do business in Africa? Because when it's all corrupt. And I say to them, when the United States of America was 60 years old, Nigeria, the big boy, the giant, 60 years old as a nation of being free, what was the United States like when it was 60 years old? And when you have that pause, that silence, and when you put it into perspective, then yes, I'm going to do business. I'm going to engage with my brothers and sisters because we share a same family. And if I meet people along the way that share the same values, then we engage in something that is meaningful and productive. And then that mind shift changes. The mind shift is that, what is Western is not always best. The West wants your market, and you have to value your market. And your market is your consumer, and your consumer lives within a family context. And if your family, is not doing well, it doesn't matter. You have all the shiny bling, but people are not being helpful to each other. It's not a safe community. And we want all those things working well together so that we can have an Africa that we deserve.
Very much for that. And now, okay, talking about what you are doing in Africa, tell us more about your project, the International Institute of Family Development. Tell us more about it. Take us deeper into the project.
Sure. We have a campaign called the Africa We Deserve. The Africa We Deserve is a campaign to establish 1 million jobs in the continent by 2030 through various sectors, through agriculture, education, health, energy, and infrastructure. We have been engaged in work in Zimbabwe around hemp development and exportation. We have done work in Liberia around education, and one of our most recent articles highlights that work, where we have an initiative called the Pacesetters Initiative, where we connect HBCUs, historically Black colleges and universities. And many may not know that in the United States of America, people of color, Black people, could not attend regular college, right? Could not attend Harvard at one particular point in time, could not attend Yale, could not attend many colleges, just what it was, right? And that was part of our history, it's part of our legacy. And in that time frame, other institutions were created. Morgan State University, Bowie State University, Morehouse University, many other colleges across this great Grambling University, which are historically Black colleges who have a long history of taking the skills that former slaves had, or freemen after we were set free by Emancipation Proclamation, and took those skills, which were hard labor skills, and turned them into industrious skills, and then use them towards the science field, where we had George Washington Carver, a great scientist, a Black man who came out of slavery. His family came out of slavery from the United States, who was made a eunuch. He had his testicles removed by one of his slave masters, because his slave masters thought that he would come of age and harm children. And we all know who did most of the harming of slaves. It wasn't slaves harming slaves. He created over 300 products out of peanuts, created soy. The federal government utilized his work and his inventions. Great scientists, William Latimer. We can go on and on about the different inventions that came from Black people, that are the fabric and backbone of the United States of America, that we use to this day. And they came and they hailed, many of them, from HBCUs, historically Black colleges and universities. So taking the opportunity to connect HBCUs to colleges on the continent to do something very different. Most times we go to college, and I'm guilty. We write lots and lots of papers, give lots and lots of thoughts, and then those theses are put in a drawer someplace, or in a binder, and collected in a book and published. Great. But that doesn't do nothing, doesn't do anything for the need for development. You have some of the brightest minds. And so this opportunity from Pacesetters is to take students, Black American students who have the same issues as many of the continental African students who are living in poverty, who are living day to day, bread to bread in order to survive, often first generational college students, to figure out enterprise development opportunities to solve African problems. And in Liberia, with the University of Liberia, we were able to create an opportunity for solar panel engineering to run a course there. And those students received credentials for running that course, from basic polyvoltaic understanding of solar energy. And then the second phase of that project is to take those solar panels that they were able to create and understand that energy, and put it onto rice irrigation, and onto rice farms, to operate their irrigation systems, so that it could be mechanized, and that the flow of energy from the sun can run that irrigation, and the excess energy from the solar panels will be moved into the houses of those small shareholder farmers. So for the first time in many years, in 40 to 60 years of someone's life of farming, they will have energy into their homes. It was done by Africans, for Africans, to develop Africa. And we're very pleased to have had this opportunity. And we're looking for more opportunities with historically Black colleges and universities, with other universities, to be able to work with the International Institute in order to work with many other colleges on the ground in the continent, to develop other initiatives out of the Pacesetters model that creates an answer to what many people, to a prayer that many people have. So what does that do for Liberia? Liberia, again, the International Institute, our goal is to make the dream come true for African nations. And the Poor People's Agenda, which is the National Development Plan under President Weah, was looking at opportunities so that it reduces the importation of rice when you can grow your own. And so maybe we won't be able in the first year, the first 2 years, be able to stop the huge influx importation of rice, but there will be a marked significant difference for a vast majority of small shareholder farmers, that they will be able to have rice not only for themselves, but to bring to market to be able to sell. If we could change the mind to your point that African rice, local rice is just as good and more healthier than mass produced imported rice, we will have a value shift where you will prefer what you're able to make yourself. And if you're able to do that, you can impact your GDP. You can then impact your poverty rate.
The African American, of course, some of them that became free, even before they became free, they already started to invent, And of course, they created a lot of things, even though from here, we don't know some of those things. But since you are in the United States, maybe you can help me there. Are their invention being taught in the school with the merit that it deserved? This you can also only help me. I cannot know that. The second part is coming to Liberia, where you work, where your project work with people. You also say that these children are able to come up with something wonderful, no? In terms of resolving the problem of the society, which in this case is a light energy. It's a problem across Africa, particularly in Nigeria. A lot of people are thinking, what should be the way out? We don't yet have the solution. But we're actually living with the solution in that if we just push the children a little bit, they will come up with the solution. Then what we just need to do is to invest in it and make sure that, because if you can identify that you have a problem at all, look very well. The solution is not far away from there.
True.
So help me with this too.
The solution is to reverse the brain drain. To build the Africa we deserve, we need all of Africa, all Africans, all people who hail and descend from Africa, those who have an Africa-focused value system and frame of mind to engage with in Africa. So part of doing this work, I told you that my work has been in social welfare. And so I operate from my heart, even though I run a business, a for-profit company. I'm looking at all of the young people from Africa who are losing their lives on the back roads going through Europe, trying to get to Italy, and they're dying, trying to get to France, and they're dying along the way. The work that we're doing of building the Africa we deserve is not only creating 1 million jobs by 2030, but you can't create those jobs unless you create industry. Industry creates hope. If you build a restaurant and your restaurant is using food and vitals that are coming from locally sourced farmers, and you're able to get your products from the farm to the vendors as necessary within a time frame that aren't rotten or spoiled. I have engineers on my team that retrofit cargo trucks with air conditioning to keep the merchandise fresh. That is for many people is the thing that it hails from heaven. And here it is something in the United States that is very necessary. And so what it takes is people to talk together and figure out, here's the problem. We do have some common solutions that don't require a lot of money. And nothing that we're saying is that you shouldn't make a profit. Right? That is not what I'm saying. But how do you make a profit? How do you make an impact? How do you bring your family along with you? When I say family, not just your immediate blood family, but your value-based global family. How do you bring them together with you to advance to a place that they feel like they are worth something, that the place that they come from, that the Africa that they come from is worth something, and not a graveyard. Not that you go abroad and you live and then you bring your body back when you have perished. Because if that was the case, we wouldn't have as many people from other places inside the continent. When I travel the continent, sometimes I go to places, if I'm in Zanzibar, I look around and I have to pinch myself to make sure that I'm in Africa, because the people that are there, so if Africa wasn't, one time I got sent to the principal's office and I I asked the principal was talking about Africa, as they do often in schools, and talked about it being a dark jungle. And I said, if it was so bad, the thieves that I know in my neighborhood, they only steal the best. So what was so bad in Africa? I got sent to the principal's office because if it was so bad, we wouldn't have had colonization. Not at all. Why would people go someplace if there was nothing there? You just got taught to devalue it.
Is so bad. Nothing is there. But how did you get something to steal? Anyway, that is an interesting part of it. All right, now, Veola, how do you identify the project to respond to? Is it that right there in the United States, you design the solution that you want to find, then you go back to Africa and sell this idea to them?
Absolutely
Or do you go there and you reason with the people and you come up with, this is the problem, we need a solution for it? How do you do that?
So I spend a lot of time in Africa, and if I could, my dream is to live bicontinentally. I spend more time living in Africa than I do in America, and I haven't been able to make that dream come to life yet. So if there's a business opportunity that comes my way through your program, I'm very open for that. So if there's a restaurant, if there's a restaurant, if there's a pharmaceutical industry, a company, a manufacturing company that's producing health, hospital, home equipment, supplies, paint manufacturer that's looking to enter into the market in Africa, mostly West Africa and Kenya, where I have a lot of support and network, I'm very happy. My team is very happy to make that a reality, is to set up industry. And that gives me more time to be on the ground. And when I'm on the ground, I spent a lot of time in Ghana, so I don't stay at Movenpick, right? It's a great hotel. I like it. I had a birthday party there. But I'm village. I'm talking with people. I'm with the sheep. I'm with the with the goat. I'm walking. I'm understanding. And then I'm analyzing. And I have a team of folks, right, of implementing partners that are constantly giving me education and educating the rest of my consultant team. And then I'm putting that into perspective, right? Because you have to connect the dots. I'm here from United States, where there's huge amounts of economic disparity and poverty that most people don't think exist here. And there are people that in my state that I live in, or city I live in Baltimore, that we have boarded up and abandoned homes, and people are living without electricity in these places. And there's food insecurity. So what's the opportunity that I look for, that we can get food products from the continent so that we can have a reduction in waste, right? Post-harvest loss, waste, and get that food product, whether it is repackaged food, whole food, raw whole food, to urban, inner city, poor people markets here in the United States of America, to be able to sell that at a rate that gives them life, right? Nutritional food is of high value. And how do we as a family ensure that we're doing both, that there's reduction of post-harvest loss in the continent that gives people, our brothers and sisters and their cousins and aunties and uncles there, money in their pocket, and we here get an opportunity to have food. And I think through, what does that take? I sit with my team of consultants. What does that take? How do we help and get a part of AGOA? How do we make that happen? AFCA, how do we realize Africa to be real? The African Free Continental Trade Agreement. So do we have transportation? Do we have the shipping lines? Because it's not just the road transportation infrastructure we need, but we don't own the shipping lines to move our products and goods, across our ferryways. And how do we do that in a way that's going to build economic opportunity and jobs? And then here in the United States of America, there's a trucker driver shortage. How do we gain opportunity to train our our men and our women here of color in trucking and transportation and logistics so that they could be owners of large scale companies or mid-scale companies and provide them with opportunities to span the continent, right? That they can do work here in the United States, but also bridge that work and develop women truck drivers, women's safety truck drivers, in the continent of Africa. So, it is nothing that is cooked up here and then brought over to the continent. That would be condescending. That would be everything that our value system for the International Institute does not stand for. So everything is co-designed, collaborative, and a process that is looking forward to building the family, building the network that we need for building the Africa we deserve.
All right. Now, what is the primary objective of this project? Say maybe, for example, okay, I understand you have made mention of having a 1 million job at a certain time frame. But say maybe you were to define the primary objective of your project, how would you call it?
So it is, our primary objective is wealth creation and legacy development work. And that work is focusing on social economic development for Africans, by Africans. Some of the other products and services that we offer are we offer loans through two lending services here, one in the United States and one out of India, for mid-scale businesses to scale up, right? So we've been successful in pairing folks to lenders. Those lenders here in the Black folks who need loans here in the United States of America that have companies become a part of the Africa We Deserve network, which we have a 300-member group chat of business owners that are together for networking opportunities, and we share opportunities to do business together, and they get support and access to lenders. And then for those who are on the continent of Africa, the Indian financial group that we work with, we're able to, if they have the right fit, are able to connect them to those loan opportunities. We also have a partnership with Fountains Inc. out of Canada, a Black-owned, Nigerian-owned company that we support big companies on the ground in Africa to have a chance to have construction equipment, construction machinery. We are not in the business of lending or leasing the machines. They're high quality, used, low cost machines that we are sourcing ourselves. They come with guarantees, and we are able to do roll on, roll off, wholesale. We also support a part of a collaborative network for commodities exchange and trading. So foods and goods that need oil, rice, sugar, chickens, sheep. We just were able to, Ramadan occurred. And so that was a really big time for us to support the movement of sheep from one part of Africa to another part for buyers, for the open market to have. So we are able to support our network to build the Africa we deserve, because we have several programs that are operating around business development.
All right. How do you choose the country to intervene in? I remember, because of your explanation, you made mention of Liberia, Ghana, Nigeria. Is it that are there some criteria? So maybe, for example, a country that you are not in the central proposal, are there certain qualification they need to have for you to be there? So tell me about this.
Sure. So we're usually invited in. I believe that if you want something, that you seek it out. So we're not in the business of sending out proposals to say, hey, let us into your country. We have implementing partners in several countries, and our track record, by God's grace, has spoken for itself. So, for example, Um, there is a network called Black Star Majesty that is that we've partnered with that to look at developing a network with the HBCUs in Guinea Conakry and Guinea-Bissau prior to the recent upheaval, and to span that relationship to Brazil. Because as you know, one of the largest populations of Black people outside of Africa happens to be in Brazil. And so creating the opportunities for two Portuguese speaking nations in Africa to connect with Brazil, to share that culture, to share that language with the diaspora, with Black Americans, Black Caribbeans, to build network opportunities around education is something that we were invited in from an ambassador level. So we are open to do business. We like to do business when we're invited in, when we have an implementing partner on the ground that is well connected, well resourced to say, here's the need. We've seen your work. We know who you are. We would like to partner with you into exploring developing this opportunity. And that implementing partner takes the lead on the relationship building between whatever ministry that needs to occur with, and then we engage full on. We want willing people who want to do the work, who are willing to play fair, and operate by a code of ethics and and are solid in their value systems around economic development.
What about maybe the diaspora, for example? I know that you made mention of the Nigeria in Canada, the company that you were referring to that produced ink or something like that. Okay, I forgot that part. Maybe, for example, some Africans in Europe, and maybe they are in business, they want to connect with you for the same purpose of expanding the African project, something like that. Is this something that you consider, or the company have to necessarily be in Africa to collaborate with you?
No, all things are on the table. There's nothing that's off the table. If it makes sense for the development of Africa, then it is on the table.
All right, thank you for that. Now, another thing I would like to know is that what are the challenges? Because at least one of the things that the people that are watching this program also like to understand is that by listening to you, they might say, okay, well, Veola is doing something. Let me also try to do it in my own, because you are not going to be able to save the whole of Africa, no? But if through what you are doing, you can inspire some other persons to do it, maybe somebody that might not have your kind of money, might have this or some other influence, but do not have the strategy. But by listening to you can get the strategy, then you are also reaching out to people in that way. Now, what I'm considering here right now and at this moment is the challenges. So what are the challenges going to African country to work and to collaborate with people?
Politics. And that politics is large P politics. So if you're not capable of dealing with anxiety and stress and dealing with African politics, don't enter the game. It is. And if you, tribalism, understanding African politics, understanding culture, culture eats the best strategy every single time. So understanding the culture and the context of which you're coming into, being able to understand business and have a business acumen. Corruption is real. It exists. And there's many people who, as I call it, you do the glad hand, where you need to get something done and you have to put a brown envelope in people's hands to move things about. And you got to understand that. And there's nothing, I'm not shaming, blaming, criticizing, or attacking, but I think there's a way in which that you have to be able to do business with this in mind, that people are can be, because of the value system, very individualistic. And let me give a point to that. When America was 60 years old, America was 100 years old before we are where we are now. And we operate in a feudal system. We had nepotism. And nepotism exists no matter where you are we're humans and we're flawed. Africa, in my opinion, as a whole, when you look at people who are doing business, they're only mimicking what they saw their predecessor do. So their former colonial master. Their former colonial masters made business decisions that enriched them personally and looked out for opportunities that were for their personal benefit that they had power and control over. And so when I think about corruption, that's small scale corruption compared to the large scale countrywide corruption. Does corruption hurt? Yes. Do I stand for corruption? No. Understanding the complexities that go along with doing this work. The other is a part parcel. The other part is that I'm the lead for my company. I'm a woman. And that in and of itself, sometimes because I was raised in America, I have to understand the cultural context of which when I walk into a room, I've been greeted several times of, and where's your husband? And so when I'm the one who's making the business decisions and I'm the one signing the check, I have to rethink about how I respond to that. If I'm negotiating with someone, I've had the pleasure of sitting down with first ladies who were first wives and second wives, and understanding their context of, their relationship and their influence and their power. Women do have power, and how we're able to utilize that power, I am learning so much about, and I do so with great humility. I'm a person that has multiple piercings. So I don't know if your listening audience can see me. I have, a nose ring and, one in my septum, and I have a tongue ring, and this is who I am. And this is decisions that I've made for myself. It doesn't stop the fact that of my uh, of my competence. And sometimes I have to think about, is this something that I want to walk into this meeting with, or do I need to send one of my consultants in? I think the final thing that I will say, sometimes I have learned in doing business is that maybe because my team is all black. Sometimes that is a problem. And it's a problem because of the perception is that something that is all black is not quite capable. And so I may have to get a consultant who is not black to lead a conversation. And so those are the things that you have to be aware of in doing some international business. And that's not just with Africa, it's with I'm having conversations with any other country. People have perceptions, and you have to be well aware of what those perceptions are. It doesn't take me away from the mission. And the mission is for social and economic development of African people. And we're doing that through an enterprise development strategy, a business strategy. And if I stay focused on that, one of the people that I look up to is Rosa Whitaker from the Whitaker Group. She's married to Bishop Duncan in Ghana. She has done a huge amount of work. And I don't know if I'll ever make it to her level. And maybe it is not my destiny to do so. I think we all play our part. And the road that God has me on, I'm grateful that I'm on that road. I pray for more opportunity to do better, to learn from my mistakes, and to supplement. Maybe there's areas of which her company cannot touch, and my company can touch those smaller business opportunities because she does large scale, super multinational, big business, super big business deals in the billions. And I'm not there yet to do that. But I do think that there's a niche for folks in the smaller echelons. And if I can be a support to people to do that work in the smaller areas that I can, I'm very pleased to do that work.
And of course, when you really come to think of it, there are a lot of businesses that is exchanging hand in Africa now. It's not in all the cases that all the businesses are actually run by European or American that are non-African American. There are a lot of some really deep businesses that are going on in some places. Yeah, that's correct. Now, but what thing I want to I want to ask you, this also, of course, is about your personal experience, is that how have you been able to navigate the political terrain that you have just described? Because it appeared to be a little bit delicate. Yeah, it's delicate even for the Africans that are playing it, no? Talk less of you that is coming from outside. So how have you been able to navigate it and find your way through?
I'm grateful that I have a strong team of consultants that work with me, that give me education. Um, I am extremely patient and I don't consider myself a know-it-all. I lead from the spirit. So if the work doesn't seem to be something that we center on together based upon common values, I rather not engage. All money is not good money. And I want to make impact. Money is important, but impact to people is much more important because the place that I'm going after all the breath has left my body, I need to answer. And the answer I need to give needs to satisfy not only my ear, but my heart will be judged from that. So I learn a lot. I make a lot of mistakes. I come in humility. I'm honest when I think I make a mistake. I ask someone, have I offended? Have I done something wrong? And if people are willing to share, they'll let me know what I think. My team has had hot debates with me. I'm not perfect, and neither is my team, but they are the better part of me. My team is the better part of me. Um, and because they're mostly Africans, and it's a team of men. And there's two females on my team, myself and a Brazilian woman. And to lead a team of African men, that requires a whole lot of queenship. I'll just tell you that.
You've got the energy. Of course, you are riding it, no? But that is why we are here, because if you are not there, they will not be here. That is obvious. Now, another thing that is also important for me is the motivation. Because one thing is to have the idea in your head to say, this is what I want to do. But when you get to the field, you realize that it's a different ball game altogether. So you need a different kind of energy to pull you through then.
Mm-hmm.
So that is the question. What is the energy that is pulling you through? I mean, what is motivating you to continue to do what you're doing?
If not now, when? That's the motivation. If not now, when? When will it happen? I'm 46. This work of developing Africa, having Africans and people descended from Africa being united social economically to get involved, invested, and inspired by each other has been going on since the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, the 80s. And what part can I play? And that's the motivation. The other piece of motivation is that I was able to bring my kids to the continent, and they experienced Africa, and they ask me quite often, why are we here? And I have to tell them I haven't got it together yet to be there full time, right? Because you attend school in America that's free. In Africa, it's not, and you're not prepared for village school as much as you think. You're not prepared for that life quite yet, my dear. And so you would need private school, and you would need tutors, and you would need all this other, things. And how can we ensure that what you receive, your colleagues, your people you play with receive the same thing? Because I'm not just trying to have you be well, but the people around you need to be well too. And how can we make that happen? So that's the motivation. I love Africa and everything that comes from her. And that means I love myself, and I'm willing to do anything to keep us alive.
I sort of like it very much when you say, not just you, but everybody around you to be well. Because it makes me want to think a little bit, no? Because I want to believe that you have been to South Africa. I've never been to South Africa, no? But okay, I've talked to a lot of people from South Africa, and I've come to understand a bit also about South Africa, no? It's also like Nigeria. where you have super rich and super poor. And
Yeah.
when you build a society like this, it's just like Israel and Palestine, no? Where you
Mm.
have a country that is extremely well and a country that is extremely poor. That is just something about human being that you cannot conquer. That desire to survive. It will break even fire. It will cross even the atomic bomb. By that,
Mm.
I want to say, somewhere among us, or somehow among our reasoning, by our new understanding of wealth, some people are so rich that they forget that if only they are rich, and no matter how big their houses will be, those that are too poor to live, they will go to attack them. There is nothing you can do about that. This is happening in South Africa, this is happening also in Nigeria a lot. So that the typical building anyway, this is not where this conversation should have come because they will need a lot of time to elaborate on it, no? Because we are moving towards the end of it, but let me just rush it, no? The typical building you have in Nigeria, contrary to what we used to have now, look like small military barrack. That is also what you have in South Africa. Except, of course, maybe you are living within your class, no? But if you are sort of a little bit, you are rich, you are really rich, or the people around you are all poor, it's obvious that you are going to make your house look like a military barrack. Now, the point is that let's move away from that. Is we need to really think for other people. We need to think that this world doesn't belong to you alone because you managed to be very rich. For this reason, you are going to spend it alone doing things that are not necessary. Think for others. I just wanted to think that one because I really enjoy not only for your children, but the people that are around your children. That is very, very important. It's about the spirit of Ubuntu, no? It's not only you. Don't think that you are too smart. Think for other people too.
Truly, it's the spirit of Ubuntu. It's the spirit of being, for me, being a woman in both my father's culture, being Cheyenne Native American. um, Being a woman is a person who is a holder of many powers and many gifts, and holding family sacred. Family isn't just whom I birthed from my womb, but all that is around me benefits from that energy. And I think that when we create spaces for that, for the feminine power, for the woman, for the divine woman to be, she thinks in that sort of capacity. And if you think of your mother and your grandmother, there was plenty of people that they fed. They extended their tables, despite that they had this much oil and this much flour or this much rice. They found a way to make sure that there was welcoming, and that's the ability to create family and legacy, because your grandmother and your great grandmother there may not be with us anymore, but people remember how that they were treated, and that piece of goodness stays with you, and it blooms and blossoms and motivates you to do, in some small way, to continue that legacy on.
All right, now we're moving towards the end of it. And the question to you is just direct. How do you really develop a family?
Well, I will say something very controversial, and it's personal. So this is a personal reaction. A family needs to have balance. So there's many single mothers in the world, and we do a wonderful job as women. There needs to be a balance in that. And that balance needs to come from the extended family to provide support, but it also needs to come from the person who helped to create these children with that woman.
Please go.
And so there's many people who believe in monogamy, many people who believe in polygamy. Some people even believe in polyandry. I'm not here to debate that belief system on any of it. I have a personal preference that I prefer. However, I do believe that a whole functioning family that's focused on well-being over the life course, on building family. For example, family of 10 or 11, one's a doctor, one's a nurse, one's a pharmacist, one's a mechanic. Then all the people of the family know where they go and they shop and they do business. and they're building their own economic framework. And then that framework supports the development of a community. And that community, right, that name of that family is well known because they can provide for their family and then the surrounding people for their safety, for their welfare, for the goodness, and bring joy and happiness into the communal environment of which they are with. And as a woman, in doing this work, as which business and otherwise, having a partner to do this work with, someone that is your equal. Um, and and when I say equal, it is not in the terms of I can do all things that someone else can do, but my equal in the fact that they carry the same values that I carry, that they have the same desires that I do for the development and business and legacy attainment matters most in doing this work.
Absolutely important. And when you were talking of energy, talking of balance, you cannot overstate that. That is absolutely important, both for the children that are growing up and both for the society that we live in. It is very, very important, that balance. Okay, now, talking from family, talking from business mindset, talking from your experience as a human being, you have undergone a journey, and especially also going to baptize yourself in Africa. That is very important, no? You have make also, that is a spiritual connection, in fact, for me, it's more than just business. So the question, this one also is very direct. What have you learned?
I learned that God loves me. He counts my tears, answers my prayers, and his partner, wisdom, is my friend.
That is powerful, and that need to be kept like that. Okay, now, how would you like to conclude this podcast? We have come to the end of it. We talked actually a lot about many, many important things, and they are really quite rich and valuable for people that are listening and watching us just now. What would be the ending statement from you about family and family development, business? Talk about African development. We talk about a little bit of also a Pan-Africanism, because if we're talking of African interests, how to survive and do our own thing in this world, that is the basic concept at the end of the day. So how would you like to conclude the conversation?
So I want to say thank you for having me on. To have this conversation with you, it has been delightful. I think it spanned a lot of topics, from business to personal insights, and sharing some knowledge, and having an opportunity to share about my company and myself and our values. Ending this conversation, I would say that it is time to build the Africa we deserve, and we cannot build the Africa we deserve without having partnerships. The International Institute is open for partnerships and development opportunities to ensure that there is job creation and industry development within African nations. Please utilize our services. You won't be disappointed.
It has been a pleasure on my part. I really appreciate that.